Hey everybody, what's up? I'm Flynn and I'm the host of Adobe Live and I'm very excited to be joined by Andrew Peters. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Flynn. A little nervous.
A little nervous. No need to be
But
nervous. No need to be nervous, man. We're going to have a great time today. It's Friday, best day for streaming because weekend's coming up. What is up, chat? Hey, Brian Malik, RB. RB stands for Raw Bacon, apparently. I don't know how that came up in chat. You guys are off to a great start. Steve's in the house. Johanna, thank you for being there and looking after us. I think you have your hands full today. But yeah, it's great for all of you to be here. If you're watching on YouTube or anywhere else, jump over to behance.net/live if you want to join in the chat. And we'll be asking lots of questions. If you want to say hello, let us know where you're from. That would be great. We're streaming from Sydney here at Adobe Live. And Andrew, you're from Sydney, but you're actually in LA.
I am, yeah, both of
Right.
those things.
Well, those things are all true. How long have you been in LA for?
Permanently in LA for the last just over 5 years. But I had a visa and stuff over here the last 10 years. So I was
Right.
kind of in and out before that. But yeah,
Awesome.
5 years, six
Awesome.
years.
And we were chatting before we're going live. I called it street photography, but then we were chatting about that a little bit more. So how wrong did I get it? Because obviously you do a lot of skate photography and portraiture photography. That's a lot of what I've been seeing, and I know about your work with monster children. And so I tried to like all encompass it, but how would you classify yourself? Like, what is the definition
I,
of what
I,
you
I
do?
just I just don't want to piss off the real street photographers when they're
Right.
like, that dude's not a street photographer. um, I mean, I'm from a skateboard photography background
Hmm.
for sure, and that's still stayed in the skateboarding industry for the most part, but kind of dabbled. Being able to shoot for monster children a bunch probably made me diversify a little more because it's not a skateboarding magazine, you know. Whereas, yeah, I grew up shooting for skateboarding magazines. That was all that mattered. The action skate photo, and even learning how to shoot like portraits and lifestyle stuff came way later and was something I had to really, really, really work on
Mm.
to get to understand that was even important. I didn't even get it. It was all about a skate trick when I was younger. You know, I was just obsessed with skating. So
Mm.
um, that all kind of just started to evolve. And yeah, the more I was able to work with monster children, they were able to probably push my eye in the direction of portrait stuff and whatnot a little more. But I'm not necessarily out on the street with a camera all the time. I actually used to pride myself on not having a camera on me ever, but that was a dumb idea. I regret that now.
That must
But
be like difficult to be a photographer without a camera.
Well, I think that also comes back to I used to just be on skate trips and whatnot, and
Mm.
and to shoot the traditional skate photo, you'd be lighting everything up, and you'd have a huge bag with all of your lights in it and all
Right.
this like extra gear, and so your main camera was normally in your bag. And it's in this big annoying bag.
Mm.
So you're not always grabbing for a camera. You're like, I'll get it out when I'm ready, man. Like, or like when
Right.
the dude's ready, you know, like we gotta like set up all these flashes and do all this stuff. Like, and it kind of for a little while, I think it made me think of that documentary style photography is like not as important as the like action skate photos. But now
Yeah.
looking back, I think I was so wrong. I think it was way more important to have all those like little incidentals and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyways, that's so it started doing that.
Awesome.
But yeah, not quite a street photographer.
Cool. All right. Well, we're going to have a look at some of your photography in a sec. So yeah, thanks for joining us. Got some folks from Melbourne, New Zealand, um, yeah, Germany in the house. That's awesome. Port Macquarie. Yeah, great place to be. Love to be in Port Macquarie right now.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
right near
So,
where my dad's right there.
oh, there you go. There you go. Well, why don't we have a look at some of your work, some of your photography of those times where you went out and you did have a camera?
Yeah, okay. Are we split screening or?
Yeah, we've jumped over to your screen now, so we can see what you see.
Okay. So I just kind of grabbed a couple of random images. This is my friend Dante, and he is an amazing skateboarder. Rides for Adidas, but he's also a boxer. And then this is all just like, yeah, I've started taking photos more out and about. This is in Copenhagen. Thrasher magazine sent me out there actually just to kind of document the in-betweens of the Copenhagen Pro, which was a really awesome assignment actually. This is from the same trip to Copenhagen with Steve Olsen, a legendary old skateboarder. This is also the same trip. This is like Hamlet's castle in the background, I believe. And that whole experience is insane. This is obviously in the studio. I had a studio with a couple friends. One of my good friends, Buddy Bleckley, ran it and helped me try to figure out how to use everything in there. But this is of Cat Power, a good friend of mine who, an amazing musician and one of my idols who I got to befriend and end up taking some photos of. That stuff was obviously studio, and then this was going to get some lunch. All this stuff shot film. Actually, everything you've seen so far is all film stuff.
Oh, really?
This, unfortunately,
not
isn't.
Digital.
Yeah.
Is that typical for you?
No, it didn't used to be, but well, I mean, I started shooting film. I grew up like learning shooting film and shooting skating film. And then everything shifted to digital. And I was really lucky, actually. I had a neighbor that was a fashion photographer. And I was really against the whole digital thing to start with, like a lot of people were. But he was like, let me show you some things in Photoshop and whatnot that are going to help you make your stuff look the way that you want it to look. Because, like, the magazines aren't sending any film anymore. And you've got to pay for your own scans now, which, like, actually became a thing.
Wow.
And so if you wanted to make any money, like if you actually wanted to make it your career or make it something that, yeah, you did full time, then you basically had to go digital. But I still wanted my photos to look a certain way or whatever, and like wanted to kind of implement like darkroom techniques. Because like I had a darkroom in my backyard when I was 15 when I first started shooting, and was obsessed with that. My first photo that was published was printed in my backyard when I was like 15 or 16, in Australian skate magazine. But I wanted to keep that idea going, even though it was digital and it felt like you were doing, I don't know, the cheeky way around it. I still wanted that look and that feel to everything. So I luckily had a great mentor named Scott Lowe, who helped me out and showed me a lot of the things that I'll try to be showing you guys today. But yeah, generally lots of film stuff these days, which is fun. It's way more fun, but often, I mean, everything ends up digital now, you know? I mean, we still have a darkroom, which is good. So it doesn't have to be digital, but most things end up digital no matter what. So we have to learn how to use Photoshop no matter what. Basically,
sure.
all this stuff's film, and very random. I'm not sure how. That's my grandpa in Australia. But this is digital. All the skate stuff, generally like skating. Like, unfortunately, skating, so much gnarly stuff happens every single day. Like, it's insane to keep up, and it makes it in some ways like a little more disposable half the time. And so I think it lends itself to digital more these days than shooting film. It's just so dangerous to be wasting money on film when like there's not many magazines to get photos in. So the chances of getting paid is really, really low.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
This is Metallica. I got to shoot Metallica for a second in Kentucky at a whiskey distillery. Yeah, this stuff's digital. Digital film. But yeah, So I mean, I shoot. I guess this stuff, the stuff that I tend to like out of my own stuff now is the stuff that I never used to shoot, which is the in betweens and whatnot. And I used to always just focus on shooting action skate photos, but they're always the photos that I come back to the most. Is all the stuff that isn't the skating. It's not the most important part. You realize the most important part's like hanging out with your friends and the time you guys get to spend together or whatever.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I mean, I just keep on shooting. Now I try to keep a camera on me at all times, and a lot of the time it's a film camera these days. There's been like a spike back in people wanting film photography again, and
yeah, I've seen that a bit. Some of the digital photographers that have come on Adobe Live have sort of mentioned even when they've started in digital, and now they're looking a lot more into film at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it looks so good. It's so much fun. I always say, like, no matter what you can do in Photoshop, because you can do so much in Photoshop and all the Adobe programs and plugins and whatnot. You really can't, like, there's an argument to be made. You can make that look like film. Like, you can make this digital, if you have a good digital like file to start with, you can make it look like film. You can go in and add these things, and that's, I don't think you can argue with that. But you can't recreate the moment that you're taking the photo after you've taken it. And I think there's a huge thing to be said for the camera that's being pointed at somebody, because it demands a different kind of respect out of your subject.
Yeah.
Is like, you can shoot 1,500 photos on a Digicam and just snap away, but as soon as you pull out a Hasselblad, your subject is like, oh, this is the real thing, you know. Like they finally like kind of give it a little more. They're like, oh, I better like look serious for this one, you know. And you finally get like what you were looking for.
You just need to put a digital camera inside a Hasselblad, like outside, just to mimic that. That'll sort it out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Oh, they're all. Yeah, it's all just a medium for like stuff to I don't know, try to get a result that you want. I don't know. They're all different.
Yeah, totally. All right, well, should we get stuck into, I think there's quite a lot that you were going to show us today as well. We could pour over you. We might have a look at some of your shots again in a bit. And so there's a Q&A break, guys. Sure. So you can see there's a little Q&A timer here. I can see some great questions coming through. We'll definitely get to them. We want to get started into some of the things that Andrew's prepared for us today, and we'll definitely get to your questions as soon as we can. But I want to make sure that we get into some of the stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the first thing, the most common thing that I do in Photoshop is just it's retouching a photo and making it into a picture that I want to send to a magazine. And unfortunately, when you shoot raw, you don't get to choose like your film, you know?
Right.
Which when you shoot film, you get to choose like, oh, I'm gonna choose to shoot, you know, Pro 400H film, or I'm gonna shoot T-Max 400 because I want this desired effect. And unfortunately, like, you're shooting raw, so you get like a flat plate to work with, but you can do a lot. So luckily, it's got a lot of information in it. So if I'm opening it up in Photoshop, it's going to come into Camera Raw, and I always want to get rid of the chromatic aberration, whether I can see it or not. I used to go in and paint it out before there used to be that option, but you just want to look for like the purpley like lines on the edges of things that there's not a lot of it in this photo, but normally you'll find it like on the side of a railing or whatever, like a red hue where it's had a little trouble reading it. But anyways, I pretty much always check the remove chromatic aberration box, because it's the first thing when everything did go digi that you could see, and you could say that's a digital photo, like immediately.
That was like a tell.
A hue outlining on highlights. Yeah, it was a telltale, like on the side of it. If there was a highlight blown out, you were like, oh, that's shot digi. And so you'd want to get rid of that so no one could pick your photo as being digital or film that you don't want them to know. I always want everything to be really straight. So I would always make sure my horizons, like find a line in the middle or the edge and just make sure that it's incredibly straight. And so this is a tiny little bit off to the right. So, but if it's an horizon, I'm like, straighten that thing out. That thing needs to sit on a page in a magazine with an absolutely straight line. Like it needs to be level and square.
Right.
So that you're not like looking at the photo funny, or it's not taking away from the important things in it. I'll keep this really flat in camera raw. Just make sure that I've got information wherever I want it. You know, maybe if like I can see that I can pull in a little bit of the sky in the top left by pulling the highlights down, but yeah, that's basically all I would want to do. And then open the image. There's a chance that my girlfriend's about to walk in, even though she knows she shouldn't.
That's all good. That's all good. It's a live stream. We've had people with their like food being delivered halfway through. They have to answer the door. It's totally fine. And you've got a cat.
Yeah.
You've got a cat that might make a cameo as well.
I do. He's up there. I can see him
hanging out.
I'm waving at him right now.
Yeah, it's all good.
I should probably. Don't. I'm like, stay out there.
Just another hour and a half.
So basically, yeah, just another hour and a half. You'll be right. So now, as I said, like I like things looking a little like a film photo or whatever. So I start to add a couple layers to bring things in and out, like the foreground to like have a little more contrast in it. Oh, there we go. We got a cat on the table because you can see mom outside. Cat mom. All right, so I would add a layer down the bottom here and add a curves layer and try to just make that a little punchier in the foreground. Mm-hmm. Now, always I've got like a layer mask on the right here, and you can turn that on and off and make sure that this is the opposing black square to your layer mask, and you will hit Option Delete, and that makes it go away. And make sure you're in the brush tool, just a regular brush tool, but make sure that your hardness is, well, I want it to be all the way down because I want it to have soft edges so that it doesn't necessarily look like I'm painting in craziness. Then you want to make sure that these are opposite again. So I want to change this to white, this square, which I just hit X, and that changes over. And then I'm just going to brush in that little bit of contrast at the bottom there, which if I take it on and off, you can see it's just got like a little more definition in it.
Yeah. And is it always an S curve that you end up kind of doing with the curves? Like, or are you just kind of eyeballing?
It can be an S curve. Sometimes I'm like adding in a couple of dots. If I'm trying to pull something out of a highlight or whatever, like I may even like pull it down so that it's going to print with a gray, you know, like pull it all the way down so that I can like just make the top left hand corner like gray or something, you know. So it's not always an S curve. I also want to make the skater like pop out a little more, so he's going to get an S curve for sure. And he's got like this photo is shot with flashes, 3 different flashes. So he has like a little bit of highlights on him already, but as you can see, I don't want the photo to look this blown out. So
and when you say it has flashes, like you have physical like flash, like soft boxes set up and flashing at them, even in daylight. Yeah.
So you can see over here, like on the railing, there's like artificial shadows.
Right.
And they're coming from all different angles. So there's 2 artificial shadows. One that's that one's because there's a flash sitting over to the left over here, which is where this shadow is coming from also.
Right.
And then there's another shadow forwards. So there's another shadow. There's another flash behind him up here. And then there's actually another flash that's just doing a tiny bit inside the bush. So yeah, you want to make him pop out still a little more. So I've done another curve on just him. Then we go back to, I want to go back to the white so that I can paint on him. And you can see he like brightens up a little bit, you know? So he's going to pop a little more by just that like small little curve there. I don't want to make it too obvious because, again, you want to make it seem as realistic as possible. I mean, do as much in camera as possible for sure. And some photos need like nothing, and then some photos you're like, oh god, I gotta like go in and like make this shit pop. And that's the other thing with skating, like shooting skate photography. It's pretty spontaneous. Sometimes it'll happen like first try. You know, like the dude's gonna get the trick like first try.
Yeah.
And then you can't really ask him to do it again, and so you just kind of have to deal with what you've got, and you might have to kind of get home and save something in Photoshop a little bit or whatever, because, you know. And then there's people that do a lot of different techniques of like plating in backgrounds and plating in things. There's obviously an opinion towards that thinks that that's a bit taboo, because it's not following the tradition of like National Geographic, where you're not really supposed to touch any of your photos, you know. But at the end of the day, like my philosophy on it is kind of like, people have been manipulating photos since the beginning of photography. Like people have been using darkroom techniques to like make things like actually pop out, and like, yeah, people have been getting rid of things in the foreground, or like, you know, blending two photos together to make like some sort of illusion. I understand in the skateboarding sense, you don't want to like mistell the story, mislead like what's actually going on. Like you don't want to move the skateboarder around so it looks like they're doing something that they actually weren't doing or something.
Yeah,
but
totally.
I do also think that as a photographer, your job is to make the trick look as good as possible, make them look as good as possible, you know, like, so if that means there's a filmer in the way, which we're going to get to, then shoot a plate and get rid of the filmer. And that's the thing, like you've got to work often with a filmer, and so you've got to work around each other. You want to stay out of the way of him, he wants to stay out of the way of you. It's a lot easier for a photographer to take the filmer out of the photo than it is for the filmer to take the photographer out of the footage.
True.
You know, so
true.
So you can normally work with them on that sort of thing. So I normally like screw around with my curves a fair bit. I mean, we could keep on doing this all day, like just painting in, but going from what we originally have to like what we have now is like not that crazy dramatic, but it is to me.
Yeah,
it's
no,
all the
it's
little things that I want to, all the little things that I want to pull out, you know. Or I might even like, you know, you can get as finicky, and this is where people probably will start to be off you, but you can like be like, oh, I want to shoot a pop more, you know, like, and just go right in there and like make sure you're not doing anything too crazy, but go right in there and just make his shoe pop the tiniest little bit more, you know, like it's can be like the smallest little adjustments, and you can then spend all day like changing it and making little things pop out. Or like if his arm was in front of his face and see the flash is actually hitting him like just in front here, if his arm had been like a tiny bit lower, it would have been a complete shadow over him, you know. Or if I wanted to even like, you might be like, I don't like the shadow across his face, like the line across his face, so you can literally just go in and paint the line out, you know, like it. Obviously this is a sloppy way to do it right now, but just to get the idea. And then you can also just change that curve afterwards to like start to make it look more like the rest of the shadow, you know. I don't want to do that to this photo, but just in case you did. Then also I normally play with the color balance. I like to like go into my shadows and maybe add like a little cyan and magenta into the shadows, but leave the blues as is.
Is that always like within day photography? Like, is that something that because of the way the light is or because of the flash?
Yeah, I can kind of just depends on like the photo as to like, actually I want to add red into this. The shadows look better. I mean, I kind of go photo to photo. I mean, a lot of people have like their set presets that they're going to stick with and whatnot. But, and then also I have like black and white. I shoot a lot of black and white stuff too, because I kind of often think it's way better to shoot black and white stuff. And then also the other thing that I would sometimes do if I want like a whole cast on everything would be to put a cast on everything. So I'd colorize the whole picture and say I want it to be a yellow hue over everything, and then just go into the opacity and say put it at like 20% opacity. So it's just gonna like coat everything with like a nice like filter on everything. I mean, you can obviously just buy like preset filter packs like Alien Skin and whatnot, like that you can go through and find what you want. But I kind of like doing it myself and adding all those things together. So then you've got this big long list of layers over here on the right. And I always want to keep that file that has all of the layers and all of the information so that I can go in and redo it or change and tweak like little bits and pieces. So I'm always saving 3 files out of Photoshop. So I'm going to save a PSD that's called Elijah Nose Blunt. Oh, this is Elijah Bell, by the way, just in case anyone wondered who's nose blunting that behemoth wall. So I save a Photoshop file, and then I will merge everything. So, and that is Command Shift E, or you can just do it on the side here, I believe. Merge visible. And then I will actually unsharp mask every time before I save a TIFF. And I don't want to unsharp mask too much so that it looks crazy digital, but I'll probably go to like 80 or something %. And so that just crisps it up a little. I don't know if you can.
Your cat's a
see
fan
the
of the sharp mask.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, he's just seeing my girlfriend sitting outside, and he's like, "What the hell, dude? Why are you out there?" It's kind of annoying. I might fix that real quick.
Yeah, sure, cool. I think in the tradition of Adobe Live having guests on, I think we're going to need to see the cat at the end.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just talking to chat, but in tradition of Adobe Live having guests on with their pets jumping on cam, we'll have a good look at the cat at the end if that's cool. It's always fun.
Oh yeah, we'll get him up here for a cameo. I wish he had a little perch. He could sit right here. He normally sits on my chair. He might actually end up on the back of the chair.
Oh really?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. So anyways, so unsharp mask. Okay. Then I want to save a TIFF of the same thing, and then I will save a lower res JPEG. So I go into my image size, which is, sorry, it's Option Command I, and I'm gonna lower the DPI a tiny bit and just. And
so that's you're making a 250 resolution. Why 250 when print's like 300?
Because it's just going to this is my low res image that's just going to be like emailed to somebody to see if they like wanted to use it or something. I don't want people to be able to necessarily like print a photo out of this. So I'm making it quite a bit smaller, but from what I understand, and I am no good with all this ratio stuff, so please nobody shoot me with misinformation here. But like a lot of the new Retina screens and whatnot are a really high DPI that it kind of needs to be around. It used to be like 144 DPI, like it was 72 DPI back in the day. That you do all your low res stuff, and then the screens got a little better, and it was like, okay, everything has to be at 144, otherwise it's going to show up pixelated. And now I just I even leave them at 300 sometimes, just because I just don't know. Like I just don't want somebody getting an image that's like looking like low resi and blurry on like their brand new huge iMac screen, you know, like because everybody's working off like ginormous 24-inch screens or something. So yeah, I just make a style that is going to become emailable and make that a JPEG. So, and I have been told some sort of myth that if you don't go below 9 in quality on a computer, you won't notice the difference. But that could be hearsay. I wouldn't do that for anything that I wanted to be printed. And I might be wrong.
I actually don't know. I wonder if anyone in chat knows the answer to that. I've not heard that one before.
Yeah, I could be totally wrong. So then I have a JPEG that's only, 646 kilobytes. I've got my RAW file that's 97 megabytes. I've got a PSD that's 365 megabytes, and then a TIFF that's 132. So, I mean, they're all huge files except for the JPEG. I can actually put in an email, which is cool.
So what do you do with storage? I mean, you must have like from your raw files to like all these different versions. You're just investing in a ton of storage.
Yeah, I just work off hard drives and then have like I have my external hard drives that I generally use and go on the road with and whatnot. I probably should have like more of a cloud system going, but I don't. So I have that, and then I have hard drives that stay at home to back everything up, because if there isn't 2 copies of everything, then it doesn't exist. At least 2 copies. Someone would tell you 3, I'm sure. So, but I normally have on these hard drives, which I'll show you here and find out. This is a bad hard drive to show. Normally I'll have like a folder just full of my skate photos, and I'll have each person's trick in the folder. And then in that folder, I will have all of the attempts and like incidentals that surround like whatever happened that day, that I can like kind of go back to. And then, if there's like, maybe like you'll send the photo to the skater and they're like, I don't like that one. Is there another attempt that might be a little better, where my feet are better or something? And you're like, okay, let's go back in and check it out. Again, some people might be like, they should use the one that they landed, but screw it, man. You're trying to make this thing look as good as possible.
Yeah. So who makes that? Who makes the decision in that situation? Is it the skater, or is it the magazine, or is it someone else? Like, who gets to go? Yeah, that's the one. That's what we're using.
I'd say it's kind of a mix between. It's a lot of the time the photographer, like the skater's not involved at all. Some skateboarders are really involved in that process, and like will be like, I want to come over and see it, or like, can I see a couple of options? Generally, at least for me, I only send one version to a magazine or a advertiser. Or a brand or whatever. But some people will send options. Some people will send, here's all 10 of the ones that are perfect or whatever. Like, you guys choose. But
take your pick.
I don't know. And that's the same. Like, some people send raw files. Like, and it just like, do with it what you will. But I've never done that. Like, I've always been taught, like, do not do that. Like, don't send out your raw files. So, I'll normally have folders like this, and I use Bridge to go through and make selects. Where I have my JPEG, I have my PSD, and I have my TIFF, and then all underneath it are all of the raw files. And so there's just a folder with a bunch of people's different names, and then once they've been running a magazine, I'll throw them into my archive folder. So I have my like fresh stuff that's ready to go, and then my archive folder like sitting that's like, it already got used, so you don't need to try to like sell that one. Basically. But yeah, and then So yeah, that's a basic how I go about retouching a skate photo. I don't know if my techniques are very normal, or I don't know. I don't know. I don't know any other. I don't know any other retouches, so I don't know what the deal is. I mean,
that's the streaming disclaimer that everybody says. They're like, hey, this is the way that I do it. It's how I use it. I'm sure there's other techniques out there, because of course there are. Everyone, you know, people. There's no right way to do things. So yeah, everyone says the same thing that comes on. So, do you ever use Lightroom to edit? There's actually a question in chat kind of on that. Do you ever use Lightroom, or you just bring it in raw, make those changes, and then jump in Photoshop?
For that stuff, yeah. If I'm shooting something that is like more of a series of things, like if I have to shoot like a lookbook or something where I'm like out shooting like a bunch of clothes and they want like a bunch of options and you've got to send off a bunch of selects or whatever, then sure, like you batch grade everything. But in general, you're shooting like for one photo, like for skating, you know, or you're picking one select of a portrait. And so I prefer to work on that stuff individually in Photoshop rather than in Lightroom. But hey, I've been told by so many people that I'm an idiot and I should be using Lightroom. So I generally go from Bridge to Photoshop. And I recently got told by my friend Aaron Smith, who I highly regard and respect as a photographer. He was like, "You're insane. Like that's the wrong way to do it." So you should get him on here because he's probably got all the right. But he's shooting a lot more commercial stuff, and he's got a different way of cataloging. Everybody has a different way of cataloging their things and whatnot. But that is how I would do it, unfortunately. So the next thing that also could be controversial to some people goes back to the National Geographic filmer thing that I'll show you. That is really easy. So if anybody like uses Photoshop all the time, which I'm guessing everybody listening does, they'll be like, yeah, I didn't need you to tell me how to do that. But if you don't, I will go back in, remove my chromatic aberration here in Camera Raw. I want my exposure to be like a tiny bit more. And then I have a picture with my friend Josh back smithing, and I have my other friend Fletch in the corner filming, but unfortunately I don't want him there. Even though he looks cool, I want him out of the photo. So I have another photo. Sorry, Fletch, but you're out. You're cut. So I have another photo right underneath it that kind of doesn't have him in it anymore. But so the problem with this sort of thing, like generally you can set up your camera on a tripod and you can kind of wait for them to fully get out of frame, and you can just like shoot another frame and it's going to be basically the exact same plate photo to sit underneath it. But I'm shooting fisheye here, and I've got obviously the film is coming through like right next to me, because if you ever used a fisheye, you know how close that actually means that the person is to the lens. So you kind of like have to freestyle it and just have your camera out like holding it and just try to hold it as still as possible. And as soon as they passed out of frame, take another photo and hope that like you haven't moved too much. Right. So basically you want to make sure that your settings are the same for both photos. And I'm not going to do much to these, but open both of these photos separately. Well, so
when you bring it in here, you don't want to make any edits you do to as you're bringing in from RAW. You want to make that consistent, obviously, with the first and the second photo. If you do anything.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Cool. And unfortunately, on this photo, this isn't ideal. The fact that the flash only burst on the first one, which is the one he's doing the trick. You can see the flash is burst and whatnot. And then underneath it, this other one, the flash actually hasn't burst, so it's got a different light to it completely. So we want to keep the good light, and we want to get rid of the filmer over here. So what we are going to do is add a mask layer over here, which is down the bottom, the new layer mask, to the photo. And then that's the same rules apply over here with this black square. It needs to be the opposite of your layer mask, and you want to use the brush tool in the same way that you would like the curves that you've just painted in, but you just want to paint out this filmer dude. So he's just disappearing. Yeah, so it's I mean, you can do a really good or bad job of this and make it absolutely perfect, but I mean, to the naked eye, like, they're not going to see that right away. Then I want to get rid of this flash, so and this is where some people are like, you can't do that, but I will. Once I have everything kind of lined up, sometimes I'll merge the two layers too, but anyways, we're only using the background of this. So we want to go back to this layer, the original layer, because that's the one that we want to change. And then I want to clone stamp out that flash. So I've got my clone stamp tool. I'm picking to the right of that where I want to sample the image and just getting rid of it. And I'll even get rid of the bottom of the stand, because if another photographer looks at this photo, they'll be like, I see what he did there. He's cheating.
So like the layman probably won't ever notice that, but other photographers, you've got to like.
I look for it in other people's stuff, so I guess they do it for me. There's a fisheye that a lot of people use that's really wide, and it's a 10.5 millimeter fisheye, and it's like the digital fisheye basically that came out. So it's meant for the cropped sensor, but it really bells out like crazy. You have to crop into the image because it's actually like, it has a vignette on it. The lens will have a vignette on it, but sometimes you'll have somebody so far in the corner that you have to crop and keep the vignette in there, and then you've got to like paint in the corner to add up for the black square in the corner. And I know all the photographers that use those lenses, or when you see one of those photos with one of those lenses, because you're like, whoa, that's a really bubbly fisheye. And I'm always looking in the corners to see where they fucked up with their clone stamping. Like, I've done it, so I've definitely opened up a magazine and been like, ooh, like I really should have paid more attention before.
It's like a trade secret, right? Like you know what to look for.
Yeah, exactly. It's like looking for chromatic aberration stuff when everything first went digi. You were like, ooh, if it's got purple or red line, like huey lines on the side, then that was shot digital, and that doesn't count. Just kidding. But yeah, even so far as like, I'd be like, oh shit, there's a reflection of a filmer in the TV screen, and there's no filmer, so could go back in here and just get rid of him, which you could do a better job of, but it's pretty nice to be able to just get rid of all the evidence. And then you could even like, oh, it's a nice blue sky or whatever, so you can like turn lights on in photos. I like it. Photoshop really, yeah. So make the TV screen pop.
And I'm just chatting to chat as well. There's been some great questions coming through. We've got about 10 minutes, and then we're gonna answer a whole bunch of them. Lots of questions about shooting, about photography itself. So it's heaps.
Okay, yeah, I'm better at that than I am at Photoshop. I think something like that.
Because you were saying before, you really want to try to get the shot, in camera as much as possible.
For sure, yeah. The less you have to do at home, for sure. I think to my own detriment, when I first started to use Photoshop and learn all the amazing things you can do in it, it made me get lazy when I was shooting, because I was just like, I could fix it later. I always thought I could fix it later, And I don't think that's a good thing, to fall back on the idea that you can fix it later all the time. Right. So, yeah, if you can, get it right in the camera. Put your flashes in the right spot so they're not in the way. And
what do you do in a situation where you can't like set up set up flashes, like, and you just have the camera? Like, is that possible? Is that something that, like, I guess, how often are you using flashes?
Not that much. Like, maybe 50-50% of
Right.
the time.
Yeah.
And I've been through little like stages in my photography where I'm like, I'm not using flashes at all. Like it was like maybe 18 months to 2 years where I probably shot, like I still had flashes, but I shot like less than 5 photos with flashes over that entire period of time.
Right.
So yeah, it all depends. I think it can take it's the tradition in photography to use flashes, or it kind of became like a standard in the industry to like use flashes and make everybody pop, and then you can like sell the photo for ads and it makes it look a little more generic. But I think that it can also be really detrimental to your composition and whatnot, because you're kind of in a rush when you're setting up a bunch of flashes around the place and somebody wants to try a skate trick. And then if you set all your stuff up and then you're like, this angle's actually not as good for the trick, you might not be able to move because your flash is in the way, you know? So
Yeah, and
you
I guess,
might be stuck, and the person's like in the middle of their trick, and it's really distracting if you're like running around the place, like, hang on a second, I just got to fix this. And,
yeah.
and you're like, oh, now I have no confidence in you because you're like obviously blowing the photo. So like,
yeah, you're like in my way.
Yeah. So
that was something I was going to ask. Like, you know, dealing with the skaters, like, you know, how long are they? Like, dealing with a model is quite difficult in and of itself. Like, just a straight up model in a studio. Like, being out on the street, you've got like a lot to deal with. You've got obviously the light, and when you're skating, you've probably got, I mean, you got people asking everyone to move along. Like, what are you guys doing here? Are you allowed to be here shooting this, or do you have to get permission? Or
totally. No, it's just constantly like that. So you normally have a pretty good idea. It's not like you're just going to a place and just hoping for the best. It's like, we're going to a spot, Scoot has an idea of a trick that he wants to do. It's like gonna look best from this end. Like, you kind of try to have a bit of an idea in your head most of the time and not just turning up blind. So, and there's times where there's certain stuff where you're like, all right, as the photographer, I'm gonna run in and I'm going to get all set up real quick before you're even there, and then kind of you get the okay to come in and try the trick once, you know, like, and pull a skateboard out before the security comes or something like that. That definitely happens. So it's just it's all about communication between like the skateboarder, the photographer, and the filmer as well, because the filmer needs to make sure they're in the right spot, you're not in the way, or they're not in the way of you and whatnot. And then there's other times that you sit at a spot for 2 hours and you can like play around with a million ideas, because it can take hours and hours. It could take multiple trips back to go and get the photo, you know?
Yeah.
So that sort of happens all the time. But this photo ran in Monster Children, but it was color, but I'm gonna make it black and white.
Do you looking at the composition here, are you considering the rule of thirds? Like, obviously the thirds guide was up there. Are you considering that sort of thing when you're framing and when you're cropping?
Yeah, definitely. Also, just considering, I'm cropping out the car on the left because I actually know that's his car, you know, like, and I'm like, I don't want his car in the photo, or it's his old car. Yeah, always thinking about, most of the time thinking about rule of thirds, always thinking about how straight everything is. And then also thinking about where things are going to sit on a page, because generally, unfortunately it's changing now, but I've always shot for magazines, so you kind of like, all right, I want this to be on the left-hand side of the page and it'll run as a double page spread and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So I like to shoot for a page if possible, which unfortunately there's not as many pages around anymore.
Yeah.
So it's hard to find those pages to shoot for, but in general, yeah, I'm thinking about that for sure. When I'm thinking about it while I'm shooting, and then also once I get home, I don't want something to fall like dead center if I want it to run as a double page, because then it's just going to sit in the margin. So, I mean, and then there's all kinds of, I like adding grain to everything still, just because I like the idea of people not being able to tell whether it's shot digital or not, you know? So
yeah,
I do use some of those extra grain programs. So
I guess that kind of lends
itself
really well to photography, right? Like it's still got that kind of grungy, rebellious kind of aesthetic.
Yeah, and it also covers up any of your screw ups in Photoshop.
Yeah,
Gives you like a nice even like seal over everything. Makes people confused.
What happens if you go out and they're skating? I mean, this looks like I don't know how this guy's going to like land this trick and survive. Like, and there's like an injury. There must be tons of injuries.
Yeah, for sure. Not as many as you think. Normally, like recoverable injuries.
Right.
Not as many as you'd think are as long lasting as they could be. All the guys that are trying this stuff are generally pretty damn good at what they're doing. But yeah, it's a huge factor in skateboarding in general. Like you're putting your body on the line, you need to be, and yeah, just being on the session, you got to be ready to help out if something goes wrong and ready to do the hospital run or whatever like it takes, and make sure that everybody's as safe as possible. But you're dealing with a bunch of daredevil dudes, you know, like you can't tell anyone not to do something or anything like that.
Don't do that. That looks really dangerous. Yeah, that probably wouldn't go down too well.
I mean, I kind of have in the past been like, oh, dude, you shouldn't try that. But then you're just like, you're an asshole. And like, let the person do what they think they're capable of, you know? Like, who are you to say? But it might make you uncomfortable shooting it. So these are I'm just randomly going through photos now. But,
cool. We got Q&A in about 3 minutes, so we're about halfway, ladies and gentlemen. And if you are joining us, I know quite a few people have joined us since we started. So if you're over on YouTube, join our chat, our live chat over at behance.net/live. We got Cat Cam. What's the cat's name?
His name's Oliver.
Oliver.
He's a legend. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oliver. He's like Oliver Twist.
What a trooper.
Yeah, he's a ledge. He's like, what are you doing? Why are you talking to yourself? You never talk this much.
Talk to me.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why I'm saving all these, but anyways. So yeah, that is the thing that I will get into next, is not having magazines to work for. So you have to, what am I doing? Have to make your own options to publish all your own stuff and keep yourself occupied, which I try to do. With like skate mags that I make.
Oh, awesome. Well, let's answer some of the questions, I think, and then we'll get stuck into the zine and magazine side of things and our second half. So I'm just going to bring us up, so it's just our heads. There's been lots of questions as we've gone throughout. Please keep them coming in. We'll answer them if we can get to them today. So one of the first questions we got around shooting was, what are some of your go-to black and white films for 35mm?
I use Tri-X most of the time. Use Tri-X, or I use T-Max too, but yeah, those two are the main ones. And then Ilford 3200 if I need something really fast, for sure. And I've even been, don't tell anybody, but like I process at home a lot, but whenever I've got a job that wants black and white stuff shot, I will shoot some of the XB5 sometimes too, because it could get processed in C41 and I could still make darkroom prints out of it easily. So
cool.
I'll do that just because the client can pay for the C41 processing and whatnot. And a lot of labs even over here don't do black and white, true black and white. So, or it just gets sent off, and I don't think people do that great of a job anyways. So
right. Okay.
But
cool.
Tri-X.
Another Tri-X. Good. There you go. Another question around shooting. What's your favorite focal length for skate photography?
My favorite lens I've ever owned is the first lens that I ever owned, which is a 105 millimeter Nikon manual lens, and it's f2.5. It's a classic old portrait lens. I bought this thing when I was 15 from the photographic trader.
Wow,
a lovely guy
that actual one that's still kicking.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. This is my first camera.
Wow.
That I bought off Guy Miller, and for a long time when I was still up till recently, I was being really pedantic about the film side. I wanted everything to look like film. I really wanted it to look like film, even if it wasn't. So I would still shoot with just manual lenses always. So I have a lot of old manual lenses, as well as having the standard 24 to 70, 70 to 200 lenses. Just because it just makes your whole process slower, and like you stuck in this focal length, which I kind of like, not being able to like move my focal length around all the time. But yeah, 105 mil is definitely my favorite, and then also the classic 16 millimeter fisheye on a Nikon. I really like that. For a minute, I went to the 10.5 millimeter one and was doing the crop thing and like making it look more like a Hasselblad 30 millimeter fisheye square, because you crop a square. But it started to get overdone a little bit in skating, and everyone was just getting so close to everything, and I was like, I don't know. I wanted to just pull back a little bit on my fisheye stuff, so I went back to the 16 millimeter lens, which I really still like and still use all the time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, 105 millimeter.
I don't think I have a piece of technology that I use today that's lasted more than like 5 years. So, like, how good's that an investment if that lens it's still kicking around and it's your favorite lens? I love that.
It's such a good. It's like a classic lens too. Anybody that has one of those is like, oh, that thing's good.
Right.
That thing's nice.
People in the know. Another question: when you get to a new spot, what's your process in choosing an angle?
Look for the closest tree and climb up it. No, I'm just kidding. It all depends. Like, I mean, after so many years of shooting skating, you kind of have your go-to things where you're like, oh, this is a fisheye spot. Like, this is definitely like lends itself to this or that. I like pulling back as much as possible in my photos so that they tell a little bit more of a story and aren't just like skate. It's just like maybe a nice picture with a skateboarder in it. So I'm kind of looking at that. How do I like tell the whole story? But then you've got an obligation to the skateboarder to get like their trip like look as good as possible. You know, that is generally first and foremost. That's what you should be there to do, is like make it look good. If you can make it look pretty as well, cool. But like you want to make them look like they're like putting their life on the line, because they are generally. Right. So it's just like whatever's gonna make it look biggest. If it's squashing the spot, if the stairs are getting squashed, like get up higher so you can see both sides of the stair to like stretch them out or whatever it is. Like there's always a way to approach it. And then if you pick a spot, don't be afraid to move around, especially if you've got time. Like if you've set up flashes and you picked your angle and then you're like, all right, I've got a photo from this spot that I'm sitting in, like move, like go and move your flashes or turn them off. Try and shoot it with natural light, see if that looks better. And that's the beauty of digital. You can see how things look on the back of your screen a lot of the time. Like you don't have to have that foresight all the time to be like, oh, are they gonna pop on this? Or like, is this, if I'm shooting black and white, is that color gonna pop off that color? You can just look on your screen, like which is really handy, obviously. Yeah, but awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, just run around the place and try and figure out where it looks good.
I like it. When starting out skate photography, it's always easy to do for free with mates and stuff like that. But how do you get brands or sponsors to take you on skate trips or commissions? I mean, you talked about obviously Monster Children. You were talking about Thrasher before. Like, yeah, how does that? I guess how do you start and how does that work?
Yeah, that's a really hard question to answer in a way. I get asked that question quite a bit.
Yeah.
How do I get into this or how do I get into that? Like, to be honest, the main reason I was really lucky. I got grandfathered into that because I was really good friends with Chima Ferguson. He's my oldest friend. I've known Chima since I was 8 years old, and he went on to become one of the most successful, probably the most successful skateboarder out of Australia. And started to get recognition for that at a really young age. So the magazines, once they figured out I was taking photos, they were like, "Oh, we'll give you some film, like, because we want to encourage you to get better because you're already hanging out with the right guys." You know,
Right.
It's unfortunately, it is a lot to do with like the situation that you can get yourself into, which is photography in general. You know, like it's only so much of it is about like the technical side of things, and then it's about like putting yourself somewhere. You know, like there's some of my favorite photographs are technically trash, but it's just that the person was there and they were with this situation and they had they were able to like pick up a camera and take a photo, makes the photo brilliant or whatever. And it's the same with skate photography. You've got to be able to get yourself into situations. So you've got to be able to be friends with the skateboarders and be a skateboarder. That's the first way to get into skate photography is being a skateboarder. You know, like I wouldn't be a skateboard photographer without being a skateboarder. I wouldn't be able to shoot NBA because I know nothing about it, and I'm not going to be able to relate to the guy. You know, like that's where like someone like a Tiva Jefferson who's gone on to shoot like a lot of commercial stuff, all the stuff that he shoots, he's really passionate about. You know, if he's shooting music, he knows the band. If he's shooting, it's a jazz band that he like plays the records at home or whatever. Like, or he's shooting NBA dudes, he knows like how many points that dude scored that season. And I'm the same with skating, and it's like I know I watch all the videos, I look at all the magazines, I study all the skate photography stuff. So you've got that in with being able to be like, oh, this dude's genuinely really into this, you know? Yeah. So that's I think I'm gonna secondhand a Gabe Morford quote via Mike O'Mealy, I believe, that Gabe once told Mike that he needed to love his subject and shoot straight.
I like it. That's so good. That's so good. Ending on a quote. I love it. We'll answer one or two questions and we'll get stuck into the second half. There are a lot here, so we might not get through them all. If we've got some time at the end, maybe we can touch on a couple. I had this thought as well. Andrew was asking, what's your go-to lighting setup? We kind of talked about lighting, but the second part of the question is, do you do one shot per trick, or do you use burst mode? What's your approach?
Okay. My lighting setup right now is just these little flashpoint lights. Everything's kind of changed in the last couple of years because there's hypersync in cameras, and so you can shoot beyond your the native flash sync in your camera, and I don't even understand how it all works. But so yeah, I started using these flashpoint photos because they're reliable, they're cheap, they're fine if they fall over. And I used to use Lumidynes up until not too long ago, and that was because they have a lot of power, and they were you needed to get a lot of light to shoot film with skating with film, especially like shooting with a Hasselblad or something. You need a lot of light because you want to shoot at like 500 of a second with flashes and like bring in the blue skies and whatnot. So you want heaps of light, but those things are so expensive and super unreliable. And if they hit the ground, you're up for $1,500 to get them fixed. So I'm glad it's moved over to Flashpoint. And no, I don't shoot in burst mode. No, you've got one shot.
One shot, take it.
You gotta get good. No, I sometimes if I'm shooting natural light for some stuff, you would shoot burst mode maybe, or just if you're actually shooting a sequence of a trick. But in general, I think you're better off trusting your timing. Like you learn, you know, you do it for long enough and you figure out which part of the trick looks the most dynamic, or like the highest part, or whatever it is. And you just get good at timing. I used to sit in front of skate videos and press pause on the skate video where like I'd think the photo should be shot on the dude getting into the rail or whatever. And like, yeah, you just have to like do that, study it and get good at it and get reliable, because you have to be able to make it work every time, I guess.
Yeah. You don't want to be in a situation where the skater lands the trick and then you haven't quite got the shot. I suppose that's an awkward situation. Happens. Yeah, it's going to happen, right? Yeah.
It's a very awkward. Yeah, the worst one is like, I mean, you'll ask someone to do something again sometimes, and it's no big deal at all. Like, they're like, yeah, of course, I'll get into another couple. Like, it wasn't like too scary or something. And then there's the other scenario where you're like, dude, do you reckon you could try that one again? And then they eat shit, you know? And you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe I asked that person to do that. That's horrible. So, yeah.
All right, one more question and then we'll get on to the second half, hey? So is it possible to shoot urban skate images with a mid-range zoom on a crop body? I only have a 24 to 105.
Yeah, of course. You've got a huge focal range there. When I first started shooting, for a long time, for a couple of years into it, I had that 105mm lens and a fisheye. I had two lenses. And then I got a 50mm lens, you know, like, and then that lasted me forever. And then I got a 24mm lens. I just had like singular focal length stuff. And I mean, you can shoot skating on an iPhone. You can shoot skating on a disposable camera. You can shoot skating on anything. If you want a specific desired effect, you might need to get some gear that's going to do that. But like, nothing's limited as to like what is suitable for skateboarding. There's also like, hey, yeah, if you want to get a super like crisp, sharp photo, you're gonna have to shoot at like 1,000th of a second or higher. But not every skate photo needs to be crisp and sharp. Sometimes it's better if there's a bit of movement in it, and it's not your standard thing, and it might not get picked up by it might not be the photo that Thrasher wants to run, because like that's just not necessarily the thing that they're doing or whatever. But it doesn't make it a bad photo, or it doesn't mean that you shouldn't experiment like and try to leave the box of skateboard stuff. People get stuck in there's like a school of skate photography, I feel like, which is really good to learn. And then you gotta try to break that school, I think, a little bit.
I like that a lot. If you able to bring your mic just a little bit closer, it might have just dipped out just a little bit then. I don't know if you're coming through headphones there, but
yeah, I can.
Just a little bit.
Is it still the same? Is it still the same mic? Is that?
Yeah, I think that's better. Awesome, awesome. Thanks. All right, should we jump into kind of the second part, because we're talking, we're talking about like self-publishing and zines and all sorts of other stuff. So let's jump into that. Should I jump over to your screen?
Sure. Sorry. Can you keep talking? It just went real staticky after I moved it.
Oh, did it? Maybe we should have left it.
Shit.
That's all right. We can fix it. It sounds about the same for us. Are you all right? You can hear me okay?
I can. You sound like an alien, but
oh man.
I don't know why that would make any difference with the output.
That's strange.
My output should be still. Is this thing like running out of battery?
Oh. Cool. How about now?
Is it sounding okay on you? It's the same, but it's okay. I can manage. It's not so bad.
Okay, let's jump into part two. We'll see how we go.
Yeah.
All right, so we're over on your screen now. So checking out your Instagram feed there.
Oh yeah, we're back. Actually, it's gone good again.
Sorted itself out. Awesome.
It sorted itself out. So as I was saying before, as everybody knows, there's less and less magazines to get your photos published in, and I come from a background of trying to get my photos published in magazines. So it was a little disappointing, and I wanted to keep on seeing my photos get printed. So I started a few different like zines and little publishing kind of things. And then also even with Instagram, being able to use that as its own kind of magazine sometimes, and like just laying out the carousels that like slide through seamlessly, and you get to like make your own layouts, and treat it like you're working for a spread again. So I've definitely implemented a lot of that into my personal work, I guess. And then just kind of tried to keep on making little print projects. But yeah, like trying to make things look like an editorial, like adding my own little like design aspects. And that's probably about Instagram. Doing these things seamlessly is one of the most frequently asked questions I get. Just how do you do that? So, and I do that in InDesign. So I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But yeah, I just wanting to self-publish. Like I made with a friend of mine, started with Andrew Curry. We made Fucking Oath zine in Australia, which is a free skateboarding zine that went out to all the skate shops. This is the first 7 issues that we did, and then I kept on doing it up to issue 21. It's the last issue, and I changed the format a little bit, but I didn't know anything about design or like whatever other than looking at magazines a lot, and I just went for it and was like, oh, I'm gonna look, there's that photo that we just retouched.
Oh yeah.
But in a magazine. And then InDesign's so intuitive, like you can just kind of like do everything pretty tactile and then just like layer stuff on top of each other and figure it out. So yeah, I made all these zines and did all the weird bad design that you see here, and all the handwriting and crap to try to, which is fun. Each issue kind of pick your own theme and try to like, all right, I'm going to use ink all the way through and then layer photos on top of ink and then put text on top of like ink blots. And yeah, having the computer to do that kind of tactile stuff, but then chuck it straight onto a spread is so easy and convenient. Like literally, like I will just like, write something on my pen pad, take a photo with either my camera or even just take a photo with the iPhone, send it straight to the computer, just get rid of the background out of the text and then drop that onto an image, like, and you could just do so much like textile stuff really easily. So I tried to keep that going by just making my own zines all the time, and
that's awesome.
Cutting out contents things, or it's all just like try to use whatever resources I have or whatever, which sometimes isn't a lot, so like for that stuff I'm just drawing it on a piece of paper and then taking a picture and layering it back over the thing. So I did Fucking Oath in Australia, and then I did one called Heaps Chat in America.
So did the Americans understand, like, does Heaps Chat translate? It's quite an Australian, that's quite an Ocker kind of saying, I would have thought.
The first issue that we did, all of the interviews were kind of based around what people thought was chat and explaining what chat meant, like to the like it was all American dudes getting interviewed and whatnot. So, but as I say, self-publishing these days is really important because it's kind of your only chance to get to do things and make things come out the way that you want to see them these days, and to actually get something printed on something tangible. So even though I'm not doing either of those zines currently, I've got another little project that I've just started working on and making, like, this has like how-tos of how to print your own zine at home, and then we made a zine of how to make your own mask, and then I just put on the website a downloadable PDF that you can like download and just print it out on your printer, and then you've got your own zine. Because when
cool.
this quarantine stuff kind of started happening, I was like, oh, might not be able to like go and even buy a book or something for a little while.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just always trying to. I made a puzzle just recently.
Awesome.
With Dylan, we made which exists. It's a real thing.
It's a real puzzle.
It's really hard to do.
A lot of water.
But yeah, so yeah, I actually end up using InDesign a lot more. Oh, a lot more than I ever would have expected to do. And that has been mostly for making zines and just doing this kind of tactile thing. But then I wanted to show you guys how to make the Instagram carousels, because I get asked about it all the time, and it's really easy.
Cool.
I don't know if you guys have had anyone ask for that before.
We haven't. I don't think we have covered it. No.
Okay. And you know what I'm saying, right? The swipe through and everything kind of joins up like seamlessly on your
you showed it before, but do you want to show us a live one before you get stuck into showing us how to do it? Because I think that will help. Because
okay, sorry.
No need to apologize at all. Just a reminder for people so they know a bit of context as we get stuck into it. And so there's a lot of questions, guys. I will try to get to them if I can. See how we go. But yeah,
here's one that
like seamless. This
is originally for Adidas skateboarding, because I did a bunch of these for them. Adidas, sorry for all the Aussies. And yeah, so just as you swipe along, it's all the photos kind of line up with each other. I think looking at it on the computer isn't as good as when you actually are just swiping with your thumb, because you can because you can go between the pages, like you can kind of hover between the two. But yeah, I get asked how to make these all the time, and it's really simple. So
that's cool. Well, in the future, when people ask you, you can just save the link to this stream, and you can just go, yeah, I showed it at the end of this live stream. Done. Dude,
I wanted to make an app. I was like even looking into it, because people kept asking like, what's the app that you made this with?
Right.
And I was like, oh, it's actually just InDesign, which I think would scare a lot of people away, because it sounds like, oh, you need to be like a pro to do that or something. It's like, no, not actually. But yeah, the whole app route was didn't sound like my idea could get ripped off real quick, and I could waste a lot of money.
That can happen in the app world for sure.
Trying to develop an app. Yeah, so whoever's listening out there that can make apps, hit me up or go and just make it. I think it'll work. So yeah, basically all you have to do that is create a new document in InDesign, and then I'm pretty sure that the pixels, like the maximum pixels, is 1350 height and 1080 width. And that's if you want to take up the most real estate on Instagram. You can also just do a square one or a horizontal one. You got 10 frames to work within. You don't need to use all 10, but we'll start with 10. So you just put your info in here, and then you want 10 pages. And that will just create your regular kind of layout looking thing here with all your pages on the right. So the key to this one, because you want everything to move along from left to right, you've got to have all your pages stacked. And to do that, you just control click on the side here, and then uncheck allow document pages to shuffle. And then you can actually just drag your pages up next to each other like this, and make yourself a real long document. And then this is basically it for your whole layout. So I've got a bunch of photos of Riley Hawk that I shot for Brixton, actually. Shout out to Brixton. Hope you guys are doing all good over there. So this is Tony Hawk's son, for anybody that's wondering.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I didn't drag that over properly. So you just want to go in, you can just like start dropping things around. Again, I want to think about my composition for a page. I want him to sit really nicely on that first page, and I want him to sit in the middle. So at the moment, he's kind of sitting a little to the right. So I'm going to pull the whole image over, which is going to crop. Just going to crop that. But then, so you've got your one page here. That's going to be your opening Instagram page. And then let's just grab a couple random photos. God knows what we're grabbing.
Just a grab bag. Love it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And then just pull them around. And then I like making collages with like overlapping images and whatnot. So say got this image here that is a bit more ambiguous. And to drop it behind the other images, you're pressing Command and the like bracket on the keyboard, which will make your image be behind the other ones, or pull it forward and back.
Right, so like send to back or bring to front.
Send to back or bring, yeah, or it does it like in order, I believe. So then you've got, say I want this to fall in the middle of the page there, so I'm gonna pull this up, and to pull it so that it doesn't get warped, you want to press Command and Shift, and that'll help with that. So then we've got a little bit of stuff to start playing with, and let's kind of shuffle everything around. But then, as I said, I like adding those little like designy things as well. So I'll literally draw in a book, like draw in my book or whatever, like write Riley's name, or like get some ink and splatter it all over the page or whatever. And then I try to make PSDs out of that where the background's gone, and say I've got like literally these are just all like little edges that I can use. And I'll say I want to drag that in, but I only want to use, you know, this part of the image. I'll then just start to work these little like kind of designy aspects into that as well, which makes me feel like I'm working for a magazine again, you know? So
right.
And this is, oh, whoops, that was wrong. And I have no classical design training at all. So I could be doing a lot of this stuff in a blasphemous way, but this is how I do it, and it's just fun. You just like start throwing things at pages. Like, let's see if we've got another photo. We should underlay.
I love that, like just bringing in, like playing around, like jumping out from like the tactile world and then like bringing it in to the digital world and having fun and like playing with the layout. Like seems like it's a really enjoyable like way to work. Like it's like quite a fun kind of just try stuff out,
for sure.
see what sticks, see what you like. Yeah.
And all of this stuff's about like storytelling too, you know, and the more you can tell us, I mean, if you can tell a story in one photo, great, like that's awesome, but sometimes it takes a whole series to tell a story. And when you've got like, when you're able to use different elements of design things or like scribbles and whatever to like keep on help telling that story, like I don't know, I like using it as much as possible. And I don't know anything about design, but I like the idea of it.
That's all you need to know.
yeah. So I just muck around and sit here, and so this one, this actually has this has like a bunch of Riley Hawks and stuff.
Mm.
Um, that I just same thing, like wrote on a piece of paper, and then you can just drop it in behind him. So it's like, um, let's make this a little bit cooler. Let's add a couple more pieces of scribble.
And so I noticed that your scribble, as you called it, is like you've done it physically and then you've taken photo and brought it in, but it's got a transparent background.
Yep. So I mean, I could just do it right now. Like scribble Adobe on the page, and then can just literally take a photo of my phone of Adobe, make sure the light's reasonably even, and then I'll just airdrop that to myself. Hopefully my computer will turn up. Which MacBook Pro is that? Okay, yeah. It should hopefully. Sorry. 1 second.
No, it's cool. I really like it. Doing it live.
Still waiting. It's sending. So
Nice.
hopefully that comes through. It says sent. There we go. So in my downloads, I can. Oh, is it still downloading? Pull that into Photoshop. And that's what I wrote on my piece of paper. Let's crop that in a little, so we don't need any of the rest of it. Now, I will normally make my levels, like pull in, make it as white and as black as possible, like that. And then I'm gonna, again, merge all my visible layers, then go to the magic eraser tool and erase. And then I just have those lines left. I'll save that as a PSD on, let's just put it on the desktop. And then I'll go back to my InDesign file and chuck in my Adobe PSD. Oh, whoops, which I did the wrong thing. Hold up 1 second. So if you pull the image on top of another image, it just replaces the image, unfortunately. So, well, fortunately, if that's what you want to do.
Drop it in the, if you drop it in over the top, yeah.
If you drop it right over another image, it will just replace that image. But yeah, so then I've got that piece of scribble to play around with. It's so fun because you literally can just sit here and like bang on another couple things, or like, oh, that piece of scrap paper is cool, or I've got like I've got an inkjet printer sitting here, so I can like scrumple something up and scan it in and reprint it back out, or just scan it in and use that, or like whatever, like just muck around with all of that stuff in it, and it makes it feel tactile again, and not super digital.
There was a question, why do they need to be saved as a PSD?
Oh, because otherwise it will have actually a white background. If you do it as a PSD, then it's just the background is empty, completely empty. So you drop it over the top, and it's only what you've saved. What do you call that? Like that? It's like transparent underneath, right?
Yeah, just like transparent background. It might be a better technical term, but yeah, that's what I call it.
Yeah, it's a transparent background. But yeah, if you don't do that, if you do a TIFF with layers, I think you can do it with a transparent background. But if it's a JPEG, it's always going to have like a white background, rather than, it will never have the transparent thing. Let's see. So then once we've done all that, we just want to export it. And this is why you want to do it in InDesign rather than Photoshop. You can do it in Photoshop and just make margins or whatever. So I'm going to get rid of these last 2 pages. Oh, where's my pages? Over here. Wait, I have to drag them into the trash. Is that the deal? Yep. And this is why you want to do it in InDesign, because it makes like the splitting everything up very easy. You then go Apple E to export, and you want to export JPEGs. So we'll just chuck them on the desktop in a new folder called Riley. And we're just going to name each JPEG Riley and put an underscore, because then it'll come up as Riley 1, Riley 2, Riley 3, up to 8, because we've made 8 pages. And so we press save as a JPEG, but we want to do the range as all, or otherwise it would be 1 to 8. And we want to make sure that they're coming out as pages, not as spreads. If you do it as a spread, it's going to do the entire long 8 pages. If you do it as pages, then it's just going to go 1 by 1. So you hit export, and then on our desktop, in the folder named Riley, you'll see these start to load in little by little. And then they're pretty much ready for Instagram, because you will just select all. I'm going to share them with myself by airdrop. And then I can open the app, and 1 by 1 you just add each thing, and then they're already ready to scroll across seamlessly, because they're already lined up in the spreads like that. So hopefully that one helps people, because that one does get asked a lot. Hey, can I run to the bathroom real quick?
Yep, sure. Go for it.
I'm gonna have to. I need a potty here.
It's okay. We can take a bathroom break. It's all good. We've got about 20 minutes left, guys. So there's quite a few questions that came through. So we're going to do that. If you have any more questions, I think we'll probably have time for a few more. So feel free to drop them in the chat. Hope to see some of you using this carousel technique. I think one of the great things about doing it in InDesign is you can have that background layer that goes across, like very easy to lay that background layer across all, which is really great for scrolling, because you always want to kind of like indicate that there's something just beyond the margin if you scroll, to encourage people to kind of go through. If you have like a single image after single image after single image, people might be less likely to know that there's more content coming up. So I think this technique works really, really well. I hope to see some of you guys using it. I'll also take the opportunity to mention that we have a Discord. So if you're not in our Discord server, Johanna in chat will share a link for that. Jump on in. So that's a place where we're hanging out outside of Adobe Live. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So please join us in there. If you're not familiar with Discord, it's just a bit like Slack. We've been having a lot of fun with it. So jump on in whenever.
So,
hey,
sorry about that.
No, good.
Luckily I wasn't carrying my lav mic in there. I would have sounded like that dude from the what's that documentary? He catches himself out in the bathroom. They're on to me. I'm a fraud.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, can you imagine? Yeah, all the nasty things.
They're on to me. They just figured out that I know nothing about Photoshop. But yeah, I use that same technique, going back to just the scribbling on the page, sending it to myself, put it in Photoshop for everything. Like these like little zines where the title is done the same way, and I like just prefer to like do everything by hand if possible, or like same as like made this little book for my friend's band and a tour we did to Europe, and I was like, all right, write down like all the random stuff, like, and here's a paintbrush and some ink, you know, and then we just shot it all, and then like can kind of just make little design aspects over the top of everything, and like breaks it up from the regular text and whatnot. So yeah, that's how I waste all my time.
How much time do you spend like between like commercial photography, like personal photography, like creating the zines? Like there's a lot going on.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like a full-time, everything like kind of overlaps each other as far as projects, you know? Like I'm kind of always working on 5 different things at once if I can, whether that's just like shooting photos of my friends or like, all right, now I'm going out skating tomorrow, or the next day I need to like stay home and lay some stuff out, or and then I'll have like my day rate jobs, you know, like where I'm like, oh, okay, I've got to go and shoot for a brand for the day, or go on skate trips, you know, skate trips too, like but it's cool, like I've been able to kind of combine a lot of this stuff together, where like last year Adidas had me go on a bunch of their event series stuff, and it was so that I could go along and make those Instagram carousels for them, you know, with sort of the same sort of design layouts and overlapping photos and whatnot, like so on a tour you're like going back the day after one of the events and like putting together a layout and then sending it to the client and trying to get that approved and make sure that all the right aspects of things are going to be in there and whatnot. But like, yeah, it's cool being able to like make that whole zine side of things and like scrapbook style stuff like a part of actually what I do with my photography as well, which has been pretty nice. So I think, I don't know, it's hard to like say that it's not like divided up into like, oh, on Mondays I do this or Tuesdays I do that. It's just like, it's mayhem. And there's just like, yeah, to do the zines and stuff, like probably taught me to have a pretty good work ethic. Like you have to email so many people and you're like dealing with all these bidders and you're trying to do design for them and like trying to make sure that everything, I don't know, it comes together. So it's frantic for sure, but there's a lot of things to, I don't know how I break it up. There's a lot going on, isn't there? Maybe I should focus on one.
No, not at all. It's awesome. Like it all exists within the same ecosystem, right? Like it's not like you're doing all this stuff and then you're farming or something. Like it's all part of the same sort of ecosystem. Has like a lot of things will lend, like the lines are very blurred between the things. It's just like outputting in different mediums and storytelling in different ways.
I'm just like ADD, I think, a little bit too, and like have that freelancer mentality where like if you're not working or you're not like creating something, then you're blowing it, because that's literally the way that you're like making money and paying rent. So if you're not making something, you're not paying rent, you know, like, or whatever. So you just constantly like, oh crap, I got to do something else. What else should I do? What else should I make? Like da da da, and then like all the personal stuff that I do creates all the other work that I do, and I'm very, very aware of that. I think all creatives should have to be aware of that like you need to just always be doing side projects and need to be always putting yourself out there so that the brands can be like, oh, he can do that. We'll just get him to do it, you know, like, or whatever. Like, oh, he's already doing it. We don't even need to ask like how to, or like come up with an idea. We'll just like do what they're already doing, you know, like. And that's the point of like constantly putting out zines or trying to work on websites and putting stuff out for free. Like, you know, you're not trying to make money off everything. You're like just trying to put out creative stuff all the time, you know? And that just starts to generate the other work and whatnot, which is lucky.
Yeah.
But yeah, those Instagram carousels, honestly, over the last 2 years when I first started doing those, like before some other people were doing them, like so much work came off just doing that stuff. It's just like, people see those things and go, oh, it's a little bit of a different approach to doing what everybody else is doing. Let's try to do that too, or whatever.
So that's a case. Yeah. I mean, if people missed it, like that's a case where you were doing it personally, and then people have seen that. I think you were saying like Adidas saw you doing that, and so you did some of those for them as well. So that's like a personal project that's led to like commercial work.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. And then like I'll do that stuff for some clients, like, and just be like, hey, I made this as well. Do you want this? Like, as well as the photos that I've given you or whatever that we needed for the job. And like doing those, like going like a little above and beyond for all of the clients that you work for, trying to do that goes a really long way. A lot of the time, like you know, there's people at the brands and whatnot are having a mental block because they've been doing the same thing, looking at the same thing like over and over and over again, and they need like fresh eyes on stuff. So having an opinion and not waiting for their lead is often the best way to go, and being like, well, what about if you did it this way, or just already having the ideas out there. But yeah, they all lend themselves to each other. They all come back. I always find myself trying to print something somehow and like scribbling stuff and then taking photos.
Yeah, I love it. We had a couple of questions that we didn't have time to get through before. We've got like 10 minutes left, so maybe we'll answer some of the questions that came through. That's cool with you?
Yeah, sure.
Sounds good.
Yeah, if you don't need me to do anything else in Photoshop, I'm stoked.
Well, I mean, if there's something you want to show, it's up to you.
No, not necessarily. No. That makes life easier.
Okay, cool. It makes things easier. Cool. So there was a question before. Do you ever compose your shots with a mag layout in mind prior to shooting?
Yes, definitely. And even for which magazine. So like if it's for Monster Children and I know it's going to be for Monster Children, then I might be like, oh, this needs to be like a full panoramic, like, because it's obvious. It's a long, for anybody that doesn't know what that magazine looks like, it is like this, you know?
Yeah.
So you might be like, oh, I need to shoot. Oh, well, look at that. 2 of my photos straight up. This is the sickest thing ever. By the way, Dan Mancina, shout out to Dan. When we were in, Dan's blind. Dan's a blind skateboarder.
Oh wow.
And I gave him my little 645 point and shoot camera, and he shot a roll of film that was actually so sick just from like listening and pointing the camera. Wow. Really cool. Dan's the man. But yeah, I'm often like trying to think about where it's going to sit on the page, or even like for a whole article, like you might even have you're better off to have like almost the art direction in mind before you go and shoot the thing. So you're like, I'm going to shoot a bunch of Polaroids that are going to be incidentals with everything. And so then as the trip sort of starts to unfold, you're like, oh, this is going to be a double page, or this will be a single page. And then this can go with that. And this can start to, like, you can start to unravel those thoughts, like, as you're going on a trip or whatever, for sure. Or same with like certain tricks, like someone will be like, oh, I need an ad for this. And you're like, okay, I need to shoot that like a little less editorial style and a little more lit and like whatever, so that whoever's buying this photo or whatever can use it however they need to use it. And then also if you're being real cheeky and someone's doing something real crazy and you're shooting for a cover, you know, like, and so I'm like, all right, it needs to be vertical, like, and so you're trying to frame up a vertical photo with them in the middle where they'd sit over the masthead, whether they're in all blue sky or something, like try to put them in a really clean background so that it's going to pop out on a magazine. Like, yeah, you're trying to think of that stuff for sure. And yeah, I think that only way to really do that is to lots of just doing it lots and lots and lots. And then it obviously helps that I've tried to lay out my own zines and magazines for the last 10 years. So
yeah, you would have learned a lot from sort of being, you know, air quotes, on the other side, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, I know what I need for this. I know I need another incidental so that I can put like, I can layer some photos over the top of something. You know, like I know what's going to lend itself to something that's going to tell a whole story of what we're trying to do. And I think that's something that, like having that opportunity, unless you are self-publishing, like isn't that common these days, and having creative control these days is really even harder. But that's something that you can do on something as simple as Instagram. You know, you can create your own vibe. You can lay things out. You can add design aspects. You can do all of that on that platform, and everybody's got that platform now. So it's kind of it's the new magazine. It is like unfortunately.
That's the way it is, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. You know. Yeah. But and then you can buy yourself a printer and do it at home too. I don't know.
That's cool. You're reminding me of last week when we did Adobe Live with Campbell, who's creative director and one of the founders of Monster Children. He was talking about about how much. He doesn't want to crop the photos that he gets from photographers because the photographers can get quite upset about that.
Are you shitting me?
And he asked me to ask you about that. So, what do you think about that?
There's a reason why he asked me to ask. That motherfucker's cropping my images all the time. Sorry, excuse my language. Yeah, he's a designer, you know, and he looks up to designers that cause a little havoc with some photographers. So I don't know. There's photographers that are really pedantic about that stuff. That'll, you know, if someone crops their image, it's like, I'm an art photographer and this is exactly how I meant it to be always, blah, blah, blah. Like that shadow in the corner was supposed to be in the photo. You know, I framed it on purpose and I totally respect that. And that's cool. I have shot for magazines since I started shooting. Pretty much was like always my motivation and whatnot to get stuff into magazines. So I've normally been pretty cool with like working with or just being happy with whatever the designer wants to do. But the only thing that I definitely like get into it with Campbell at Monster Children over stuff because he's not from a skateboarding background, and so there's aspects in a photo that need to be there to tell the story of like what happened in the trick. You know, like you can't crop out the bottom of the stairs, or you can't like crop out like the part of the rail that like is the kink on the end or something. You know, like just because like if you're looking at it from a complete like designer's way of looking at stuff, then that might not look cool on the page to you, but from a skateboarder's point of view, that doesn't even matter, you know? Right. So like he'll crop some of my stuff and I'm like, dude, you honestly can't crop it like that. Like, yeah, have to leave it loose. Like you just cut half the actual spot out. So that's more to do with me like coming from the skate background. But I think in general, I like the idea, like I know Campbell looks up to like the Chris Ashworth ray gun kind of style design, and they were like so chaotic with the stuff that they were doing, trying to like push the envelope on design, you know? So I can't even, I was saying this to a friend just the other night because we were having a look at that book, and I was like, I can't imagine what it must have been like some of the times for some of the photographers that would hand in some of these amazing portraits and whatnot, and then seeing how they got published would have been crazy because like they would have just put a black square over the whole photo or something, you know, like they literally like kind of just like would fucking with stuff. Like it was like anarchy on purpose in a way in that design. Well, you know, like they did that Brian Ferry. I think that was a Brian Ferry interview where they just used the symbols font for the whole interview instead of any of the actual words. Like that sort of shit. You'd be a writer being like, I just wrote the sickest, did the most amazing interview, and then like, no one can read it. Like you have to have a translator to read it. You know, like it's kind of the same thing. It's like, yeah, everybody likes taking their little liberties and making it their own, and I totally get it. Especially Campbell, he's a creative director of a magazine as well as the designer, so he's like got a very specific vision for how he wants things to look. But yeah, sometimes I have to pipe my head up and say, "Yo."
So yeah, obviously you
can't even see what's going on.
Develop a relationship, and yeah, it's quite funny that he asked me to ask you that. So I really like that. So maybe one more question, maybe two. I'm not sure. But there was a couple of questions around people that are new to photography or like might have a camera and don't shoot all that much. So I'm just going to kind of summarize some of the questions into one, which is like, what advice do you give to like budding photographers out there, like people to get out? Because there was lots of questions about like, how do I frame? You know, what's the best way to work with like a model? Like, do I get friends and stuff? So do you have any kind of general advice that you give out to people looking to get more into photography or more into like commercial side of photography?
I think that Gabe Morford quote's real good. That's like, you've really got to love your subject and you got to shoot straight. And I think by shooting straight, it's just being like honest about the picture and like trying to tell the story that like shoot your audience straight in a sense, or like send them the story that you want as quickly and precisely as possible and get straight to the point kind of thing. and then just shoot lots, like shoot as much as possible. If you don't use your camera much, then that's the first problem. Like the more you shoot, it's like any kind of muscle, it's going to get better and more fit and more refined the more and more you use it. So I think that's really important, to be using it as much as, use a camera as much as possible, because then you'll figure out the things that you're good at and the things that you need to work on. And don't compare yourself to anybody else, because that's just like a bad way to like be disappointed. Everybody's out there shooting amazing stuff. There's more, there's so many photos that are out there, and so much stuff is being put out every single day. You can't keep up as an individual, so it's okay. Just like kind of just worry about what you want to shoot and do that. Right. I don't know. And it's really hard to find a subject that you want to shoot all the time. I was really lucky to have skateboarding, you know, like, and I feel like some music photographers are really lucky that, you know, they just loved the music. They were there no matter what. They weren't even there for the photos, and then the photos kind of became their own thing or something. It's the same with like, I don't know. I used to have that analogy on like, oh, do I ever want to get into like fashion photography or something? And I was like, I would probably not be any good at shooting fashion photography, because I don't really care about fashion, you know, like, so it just wouldn't make sense. But whereas like portraits or something, I care about people, and I care about conversation, and I care about learning about their personality. And so hopefully that would make me okay at shooting their portrait, you know. Totally. You just gotta love your subject, you know.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. It sounds quite obvious as when you say it, but actually it makes heaps of sense. Like, find that thing that you love, and whether it's photography or some other creative pursuit, and then, you know, just immerse yourself in it, because it's coming from a really natural place. We're out of time, Andrew.
Okay. Perfect.
It's been great. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us. There was so much there. A lot of people giving you a lot of praise in chat about your photography and the way that you helped us and explained your thinking around things, and then also in particular the layout, which a lot of people found really useful. So I'm sure they're going to give it a go themselves. So thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. I hope someone learned something, and then it was all worth it.
That's it. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Oh, sorry, you were going to say something?
No, you go for it.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Join us in Discord. Have a great weekend. Andrew, thank you once more, and we'll see you all next week on Adobe Live.
Thanks, Flynn, and everybody that checked in. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. See you later.
All right. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.